So we felt to do a short video on the principle of resurrection. At times in our connection when we would encounter difficulties, and there were lots of those times, I was often told inwardly by the Christ that this too can be resurrected. And it often was at a point when it didn't seem like anything could be resurrected, where it seemed like everything looked very hopeless and kind of dead end. But always, if we turned what we were experiencing over to the Christ, we would be led through a process that would eventuate in, indeed, everything being resurrected, everything being brought into a death and rebirth process that would end up in our being in a completely new place in consciousness, in a place that allowed a lot more union and connection and oneness rather than the separation that we had been experiencing. So we thought that it could be really nice at this season of the year, this holy season of the birth of the historical Christ, to do a video on exactly that, that this too can be resurrected. So would you like to say a couple of things about the Christ and how the Christ is different from the historical Jesus?
Yeah, there's, and for very good reasons, there's a lot of resistance sometimes to Christ, being Jesus, because of some of the things that Christianity perpetrated. I think it's important to disentangle Christ and Christianity. You know, the being we knew as Jesus who became the planetary Christ. And I'll talk about what a Christ is in just a second. You know, he walked as just any other avatar. And Christianity didn't happen until 400 years later in the Council of Nicaea, which birthed what we now know as Christianity. But in essence, he had nothing to do with that. He was just like all the great ones who came to walk here. And I think what is so unique about him is that he was really the culmination of a process been going on in this earth for quite some time. And there have been many great avatars, like Buddha, Krishna, Zoroaster, all the Tibetans, every tradition. And great beings have come, Lao Tzu, to bring the impulse of the divine into the human experience. And Jesus was just the being who was able to kind of carry this thing across the finish line. You know, everybody walked before him. It was kind of like a relay race, but he got the last baton to where humanity could receive the fullness of the Godhead as being incarnate. Like he said, I and the Father are one. And that's ultimately the destiny of the soul's human journey, is to realize that. And Jesus did that in a way through his public appearances of demonstrations of unlimitedness, raising the dead, healing the sick, and ultimately his greatest demonstration, which is his crucifixion, death, and resurrection, where he showed us the absolute truth of our nature, that nothing has any power over us. We're unlimited divine beings, and that this body and even the illusion of death have no power over who we are. And witnessed by hundreds and hundreds of people, this became embedded in the collective unconscious and anchored on the earth. And the Last Supper, where he birthed the idea of what became the Eucharist or the Holy Communion, was that through his grace, through what he realized, he accomplished that for all beings, for all humans. And if we could just receive the gift of the Christ, not just as Jesus, but as this universal principle of divinity, a soul fully realized, that it's our ultimate destiny, that we could receive that through grace. And that is available to all of us if it's our path, if it's our calling. So at this Christmas season, it's the possibility to realize that the Christ is birthing in us as our true eternal self, the God in us, is awakening. And we thought we'd do a little process with that. And you can bring whatever you have, because everything that you have going on is not adverse or separate from that. Karen, I love that saying you have. I'd love you to share that.
You know, I had so much stuff to overcome and so much stuff to work through earlier in my journey, especially. And at some point, much later, I heard the words, "Our stuff is not in the way, it is the way." And that totally turned things around. Because I had often thought, if I could only get beyond all this stuff that I keep dealing with, I could really get someplace spiritually. So hearing that the stuff is not in the way, it is the way, gives us all that encouragement to just be with and be available to the process that the divine is leading us through with this stuff, exactly the way it is. And that there's nothing to really fear in that process. The more we learn how to be with what we're experiencing, no matter how deep in ourselves it takes us, the more courage and strength we begin to access in our being as well. The more we become aware that we are filled with those divine qualities of perseverance, persistence, strength, courage, dignity, and the ability to simply show up with whatever we find in front of us, whatever the next step is in our liberation from all that we are not, so we can experience more and more of who and what we really are.
Early in our work with people over 30 years ago now, we kept experiencing the same phenomenon that was really kind of surprised us, because we held the common idea or concept that this stuff was kind of in the way, all these dark things, these wounds from childhood or past lives that were in the way, and it really was about getting through and beyond these to the light. People would come and they would go into these dark places. And we just trusted this is where they needed to go. But what we found was the deeper they would go into these dark places of suffering and wounding, they would sometimes go so deep into such levels of hopelessness and despair and overwhelm. We would go like, what is going on here? How do we hold this? Where does this go? But we found that when it was allowed to proceed, to take that dive, to go down and down, eventually what would happen, there would be this place where they would come out to the bottom of that. They would come to this place of stillness and depth, and then something magic would happen.
Yeah, we really found that awakening occurs as a figure eight. That we're brought up and out and have beautiful spiritual experiences that then want to be brought down and in to integrate. And the same way, when we're brought down and in to those deepest, darkest places within us that haven't received the light of who we really are yet, that automatically carries us back up and out. And so evolution, soul evolution, is really this process of being brought up and out, down and in, over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And we learn to trust that process. We began to call it the conveyor belt of awakening, because it was automatic. It wasn't something we did or made happen or anything like that. It was just something that happened when we got out of the way. And when we would turn the session, each person's session, over to the soul that they really are and to the vastness of their true self, this is the journey that we would be taken on over and over and over again to bring this point home. That there is no place that the journey stops unless we're not willing to be with what's there. And then it persists. It just hangs around until we are able to gather it into our heart and soul and include it in the wholeness of who and what we really are. Then the conveyor belt just continues to carry us everywhere it needs to go, down and in, up and out, in this beautiful flow that nobody could orchestrate except the divine within us that we call the soul.
Every time we make that circuit, this God center in us, the soul lotus, it expands, it opens more. And literally our auric field embodies more of the light. Without this dive, what is up there has to have a place to land. It has to have something to enfold it and give it extension, to give it beingness. And all that darkness, it's actually dark light. It's the divine feminine. It's the mother principle. She takes that light, just like in nature. What does the soil do? It brings the light of the sun in, puts it down to dark loamy enough of the soil, and life comes out of it. And that's what happened. We've seen it again and again and again. So all those wounds, all those quote-unquote negative emotions and feelings and limiting beliefs, when we're able to be with them and turn them back over to the light, they become alchemically transformed into these luminous awakenings, these revelations, these insights that cause us to expand our consciousness, to make us more fully realized divine beings.
Yeah, and every time we're brought down and in, we're brought into the material, the raw material, the stuff that becomes the compost, where all the seeds of awakening from our journeys up and out can be brought in and can land and can be germinating within us. And so the more we dive into what we thought we couldn't go near, that loamy soil, that compost, the more we're able to embody and walk as the realizations that we've been blessed with. They're not just somewhere up here hovering above us in the ethereality of our nature, but they're brought down and in so that we can walk the earth and bless the earth with every footstep of our realization of self, of life, of the one, of the divine, all one thing.
Do you want to do a little process?
Feels like time.
Why don't you go ahead?
So if we feel in our hearts and souls that part of our reason, or a core part of our reason for being here, is to embody more and more of the frequencies of possibility that the Christ showed us and demonstrated through the being Jesus, then we could do a process, we could embark on a journey that will bring us in touch with whatever might be in the way of that taking its next steps in our evolutionary journey as a soul. So we could go inside, we could just allow our eyes to gently close and feel that as the eyes close, our awareness begins to travel into the inner worlds where all the true change happens.
And Karen and I will be holding the space of the Christ presence and consciousness. And so whatever you bring into this place, you'll be bringing into this field.
And so we might just offer a simple prayer to the divine in us and the divine in all of creation and beyond creation, that we would like to take the next steps in our Christing process, the process of knowing that we are a luminous Christ, a being that's capable of acting in oneness with the divine as a whole, and who is here to manifest and express that divinity through everything we are and everything we do, through every step we take on our beloved Mother, our planet.
You may have something that's been troubling you lately, or some sort of pain or issue that you can bring to this if you like. You can just get in touch with it.
Whatever is unresolved within you, whatever is, quote, in your way of knowing yourself to be the Christ that you are. We can just gently ask that to come forward right now into your awareness, whatever it might be, on whatever level of your being it might exist or seem to exist. Let's just call it forth now, whatever's in my way of knowing myself to be the awakening Christ that I truly am. And just let it gently come into your consciousness. And let's just feel ourselves being breathed by the one great being, the one great divinity that's breathing life into all of creation. Just letting our awareness rest on the fact that we're being breathed with no effort, no trying, no doing at all.
And just fall into that space just above your heart, where the divine in you resides. And just settle in there for a moment or two. It's a space that holds everything, and from which everything comes forth. And just settle in there for a moment, into that peace, into that stillness. If there's thoughts, etc., just let them go by. Just settle in for a moment.
And now whatever it is, whatever seems to be in the way, whatever seems to be an obstacle to your knowing and being the fullness of the Christ that you are, let's just bring that into that space, that sacred altar of our beings in our heart of hearts. And let's just lay it there on the altar. In all of its fullness of whatever it is or seems to be. Let's just turn it all over to the divine within us and the divine as a whole, and to the resurrecting power of the Christ.
By turning it over, we mean to surrender it completely, to realize that we aren't doing anything. We're simply allowing grace to take dominion, and we're giving it 100% of our God-given free will to allow it to do whatever is necessary, because we can't know that. We can't know how this will be resolved, either during this time together or as it unfolds in the days ahead. You're literally letting go of the steering wheel. It's no longer yours as a personage. It's God's now.
And like little children, we're saying, I don't know what to do with this, but you do. You do, my divine soul, the soul that I am, and you do, the divinity as a whole, the oneness of what we call God. We don't have to know what to do with it. All we need to do is turn it over to the levels of being that do know and give it completely to them. And now let's call in the resurrecting power of the Christ into exactly what you've laid there on the altar of your being. And we can affirm, I am the resurrection and the life of whatever this is that I've laid on this altar of my being. Whatever aspect of myself or my life, whatever relationship difficulties, whatever it is, whatever form it's taking, I am the resurrection and the life of this.
And it's just to be present with what unfolds, because it is that process. Staying in touch with what you're feeling and witnessing. Open up that single eye just to witness what's arising and to feel the feelings, emotions, subtle feelings. We're not trying to do anything, not trying to change anything, fix anything, rise above it. We're just like watching the movie, being in the movie of what's arising, feeling, witnessing.
I am the resurrection and the life. If the mind comes in and says, this can't possibly work, we can turn that over too. I am the resurrection and the life of these thoughts, of these emotions, of these places within me and without.
Just rest gently and peacefully in that place above the heart, feeling and witnessing. If you find yourself drifting up into thought and mind in the head, just gently bring yourself back down. Breathe and feel and witness. And allow, just allow.
I am the presence of the resurrecting power of the Christ. If deeper layers are arising or other aspects of what's going on are appearing, simply affirm, this too can be resurrected.
It may move from one thing to the next, a feeling, a thought, an image, something in the body. That is the resurrecting process. It's unwinding something that's been knotted up inside there. Just allow. Just go on the journey.
If a lot is arising and you need more time for all of it to move through, And to be resurrected, you can pause the recording and let your own journey continue as long as it needs and wants. Just affirming, I am the resurrection and the life of all of this. I am an awakening Christ. And as the process continues, you may feel the golden white light of the Christ pouring into all those places within you that were in need of the resurrecting power of the Christ.
So you may want to continue, or sometimes laying down is very helpful to integrate this and let it settle. We suggest you give it some time to let it all integrate and be gentle with yourself as you come out. Giving yourself the love that you deserve.
And plenty of time to let the process continue and land deeply within your being on all levels, letting the process integrate and ground into the fullness of yourself. So we send you our love and blessings. Namaste. We bow to the divine light that you are. May it shine ever more brightly out into the world to bless all beings and the earth herself.